Well, we are now on the Genesis study. We are finished the chapter 18 last time. Before we begin 19 and 20, that's what I hope to do this morning. So before we jump into 19 and 20, just I want to have a recap because we are now following the storyline of Abraham. I remember I mentioned to you that the book of Genesis, after right from 12 to chapter 50, the last chapter of Genesis, it is a story of four people. And the starting one is Abraham. So Abraham's story started in chapter 12. In chapter 12, we see that Abraham leaves Ur and Haran. He left Ur, he came to Haran, stopped there for about 5 years, and then continued. But before that, his father died. That made him free to take leadership and then obey the Lord. And he finally arrives in Canaan. Beautiful, great achievement, great man. God said, Mabruk, well done. But then what happened is, in the same chapter, we find something which is not very good. He made a wrong move to go to Egypt when Canaan was in a famine. Instead of asking God, because God is the one who asked him to go there. So if there's a famine, you need to ask God, Lord, what did you do with me? What do you want me to do? But instead of doing that, probably he made things in his own hand and went to Egypt. And then, after spending some time, we know the story. He was disgraced before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh put him out, and he returns to Canaan. But he took an Egyptian maid for Sarah, and they came, that's Hagar. So he came back with Hagar to the promised land. God miraculously helped Sarah to protect her posterity because Abraham is the promised seed of the Messiah. The Messiah should come from his genealogy. So Sarah needs to be protected. The seed needs to be protected and it should not be messed up with anybody. And she was about to get spoiled, but God intervened and Yahweh brought the family back. What's the lesson? Always ask God what he wants us to do when we are in a crisis. When we don't know where to go, ask God. Chapter 13. Lot separated from Abraham. Lot was not included in the original scheme of affairs. Abraham took him in order to have a physical protection in that strange land when he is going to just sojourn. Well, God created, there was a situation created there. Lot separated, and there was a strife between the shepherds of both Abraham and Lot, and Abraham got involved and solved the problem, showing up his exemplary character. The man who failed in Egypt now shows up and a very exemplary character. Have you heard in mathematics a sine curve that goes up and down? Sine is a mathematical entity. So if you draw the graph of sine, it is always just like a wave going up and down all the time. That is the character of Abraham. And don't you think that's also a little bit of sine curve is in our own life? We are never a straight line progression. We fall. But since we are God's people, we know that we have fallen. And the Spirit of God asks us to get up and run. So we get up. we continue our journey. So it's a progression of up and down. Did you get that one? It's a progression, but it's up and down. It's never a straight line. Chapter 14. This Lot, when he moved, finally settled down in Sodom. He became somebody there. But then there's a war between 4 kings and 5 kings. And the 4 kings came. The 5 kings came from Mesopotamia, and then defeated the 4 kings, including Sodom, Gomorrah, and a couple of others, and took the wealth of Sodom and the people of Sodom, including Lot and his family. Abraham heard that, so he took 318 people of his own clan and went after those 4 kings who defeated the other kings and rescued Lot. Again, another star to his character, Abraham. Yahweh ratifies an unconditional covenant with Abraham in chapter 15. It's a giant step of faith. God promised him that he will be made so and so. When there was no sign of a posterity, when the couple was getting old, when he was told that he is going to be the father of many nations, he believed that. And it was counted for him as righteousness. A giant step of faith, great man. Hagar giving birth to his son, giving birth a son to a son Ishmael. That's where Abraham loses all his merit points. He collected so many merit points early. But over here, instead of waiting for God's time of fulfillment of the promise, he took things in his hand, listened to his wife, Sarah, without correcting her. He just said, okay. And then Ishmael was born. And that is again a lesson for every family member, especially head of the family. If the head of the families are listening to me, you have a great responsibility to keep your decisions truly checked and verified whether they are according to God's plan. So Abraham failed here. Now he has to get up again. Yahweh changes his name to Abraham, from Abram to Abraham. So God doesn't leave him. Even though he failed in many times, God is still faithful to fulfill his promises. Yahweh changes Abram into Abraham. Why? Because the meaning of the word Abraham is the father of many nations. When his servants and Sarah and many other people calls him Abraham, they are calling, you are the son, you are the father of many nations. That reinforces and re-strengthens that faith in Abraham that he is in God's plan and God is going to do it. So in order to make God's promise as a constant reminder, that's the reason why the name change took place. So every time his name is uttered, that is reminded that I am promised with a seed. So it goes on and gave him a right of circumcision. That again is another reminder that Abraham is separated from the rest of the people. And he promised a son by next year. By the time Abraham is 99 years old. So what happened is Abraham was given the final time frame. This is the first time that God gave him a time frame of fulfillment. Next year, by this time, I will come by and then you have a son. It's very specific. And not only that, 1 year before the birth took place, God revealed what should be the name that you should call to the son who is yet to be born. Isaac. Isaac is a word that not chosen by Abraham or Sarah, is a word that's chosen by God. We call him Isaac. The meaning of the word is laughter. Why? Abraham laughed when this was told him. Later on, we can see Sarah also laughed. So this is the laughter. Whenever Isaac is there, they will say, oh, we wrongly laughed at God's promises. Well, chapter 18, Yahweh visits Abraham's tent, changes Sarai to Sarah, confronts her unbelief, and confirmed again that she will be having Isaac by next year. So that is the story of the chapter 12 to 18. Abraham intercedes and negotiates with Yahweh for Sodom and Lot, not to destroy the city. Yeah, that shows Abraham's shining character and his intimacy and freedom with Yahweh. These things we have seen last time. The reason Abraham was bold enough to negotiate with who? The one which we mentioned, the Most High God. He was so bold enough to negotiate with Yahweh. And Yahweh enjoyed it. See, when we become open and then wanted to share our feelings with God, you know, he's so happy. I remember my mom when she was praying, especially before when we were facing with some issues at home, problems at home, sickness at home. She used to argue with God. She used to say like this in Malayalam, Kartave, നീ എന്താ എന്നോട് ഇങ്ങനൊക്കെ ചെയ്യുന്നത്? എന്നോട് നിനക്ക് വല്ലതും പറയാനുണ്ടോ? ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ പറഞ്ഞാട്ട്, ഞാൻ കേൾക്കാൻ തയ്യാറാ. I am ready, Lord. Why are you doing this to me? Have I done something wrong? If so, tell me. Otherwise, tell me what you want to talk to me through this one. I know this incident is a messenger, and the messenger has got a message. Tell me what is the message you want to convey to me through these difficult situations you have put me in. And Amachi gets the revelation. She gets the insight what to be done. And that's what we see here in the life of Abraham. Well, we'll move on to chapter 19 and 20, at the session 10. We are not started 10. Okay, this is the one. Chapter 19 is the story of Lot. It's one of the saddest stories in the Bible. Lot in Sodom. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now it's called the Sea of Lot in the old annals of history. It's also called the Sea of Sodom. It's called also the Dead Sea. That's what it is now known for. A shameful and tragic end of a righteous man. That's the story of Lot. A shameful and tragic end of a righteous man. That's the story we read in chapter 19. What about chapter 20? Abraham, the father of faithful, succumbs to fear and makes same foolish decision twice. God intervenes and rescues Sarah and her promised posterity again. So 19 and 20 are two sad chapters of biblical record. Lot, shameful end, though he is called a righteous man. Abraham, the father of faithful, but doubted. Not only that, he did the same mistake twice. That's the two chapters we are going to deal with. The king of Sodom, as well as Lot, ignored the warning from Yahweh. Remember that earlier the 5 kings came and looted the wealth of Sodom, and Sodom king ran away for his life and met with Abraham and Melchizedek in chapter 15. Lot was taken away as a prisoner of war, and then Abraham rescued. That should have been a good lesson for the Sodomite, the king of Sodom and Lot. That was a good lesson. That was some sort of a punishment for the wrongdoing, so that they should not repeat it. But it didn't work. Why? Depravity of sin is embedded in the soul of every human being. Man is evil to the core. Unless God intervenes, he cannot make himself better. That's the thing that we see here. The earlier plundering of Sodom by the 4 kings and Abraham's rescue mission should have been a warning for Sodomites. As we read in chapter 14 and 22 that happens. But that didn't work as a warning. Lot probably was made the mayor of Sodom by the king in gratitude to Abraham. This is P.C. Abraham's interpretation. It's not in the Bible. But this is what my sanctified imagination. Because we'll see that later on, when the 2 angels visit the city of Sodom with an intention of finding out the degree of evil and filth and immorality of that city, they found Lot sitting at the city gate. City gate is the place where the judge or the chief of the city is seated. Or in the modern language, we can call it a mayor. So that's the reason why I made a statement. Lot was probably made the mayor of Sodom by the king of Sodom. Because why? Because Abraham is the one who rescued him and reinstated the kingship. And he knows that Lot is Abraham's nephew. So probably when he came back to Sodom, the king came back to Sodom, and all the wealth came back, Lot came back. Probably as a thank you to Abraham, he might have made Lot, come on, Lot, be the mayor of the city. Well, may or may not be, but there's a good possibility. The city was filled with evil, immorality, homosexuality, lawlessness, and the cry of the city reached God, and he wanted to take action. Again, it's happened once, but this time it's going to be severe. The first one was a punishment, but he gave all the wealth back, thinking that they would change their mind. And since he knew that they didn't want to change their mind, they went from worst to worst, experts in evil and homosexuality that God that hates. He decided to destroy the city, and the 2 angels came to Sodom to test waters. How evil is the evil in Sodom. That's what we read in verse 2 of chapter 19. The angels appeared as men were found attractive to the homosexuals, and the crowd en masse surrounded the house of Lot to get them out for their use. That itself was enough for the angels to find how evil is the city. You see the angels coming from God. They appeared in human form, and they were very smart and very handsome and attractive. And these homosexual experts of that city found them, and they were after them. And they surrounded the house of Lot. Where do we read that? Verse 5. And they called Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them carnally." That's what they demand. And then, so Lot went out to them through the doorway, shut the door behind him, and now he is beginning to negotiate with them. And how did he negotiate? Whatever little, an ounce of respect I had with Lot was lost in verse 8. No father should ever think of doing it. What was he saying? See, now I have two daughters who have not known a man. That means they are virgins. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Whoa! What did we hear? A dad doing this to his own daughters, throwing them out to the cannibals. Do what you want to do with them. Do you think this is something exemplary because they are angels, he wants to protect the angels at the expense of his daughters? No. What happened is he lost his moral sensitivity. He doesn't know what he's doing. He lost his responsibility. There's no morality in the home, even. Sodom got into the house of Lot. Not that Lot went into Sodom. Sodom got into the house of Lot, and that's what is happening. With verse 8, I have a great dislike and nausea to this man, Lot. Because I know I have a daughter. I put her in the situation. I will die for her. Never do it, never even think of doing it. But this man doesn't have any remorse here. So that's the Lot. That's the depravity he has slipped into. When he left Abraham, the man of God, and then separated from him, even to the point of hurting Abraham, moving slowly towards Sodom, finally ending up his life. This man is a big lesson for all of us. When you separate from the man of God for whatever reason. When you hurt a man of God, that's a danger track. You're never going to make it. Because what God says, his people are the apple of his eye. The ones who are truly devoted to God, God's people, God sees them as the apple of his eye. So when anyone tries to manipulate and mess with the apple of God's eye, they are going to pay a heavy cost. History has got many, many examples to prove my statement. Lot's offer of his two unmarried daughters to them as substitutes is unthinkable. He was willing to trade off his own daughters to the carnivals of the city. Oh, a responsible father? Where are his family values? Sodom gets into Lot. He lost sight of his family responsibilities. Sorry state of affairs. Lot and his family end up in shame. Tragic consequences to follow. A poor role model not to be. Fathers, beware. Lot is a poor role model not to be followed. If you take one person from the Bible that we should not follow, I'll pick up Lot as the first one. He lost all respect and spiritual influence within the family. His in-laws ignored him and mocked at him and sent him back. In verse 14, you know the story. Since we know the story, I'm not going to go back into the storyline of what happened. We know that the angels came to Lot, and he blindfolded the people who are outside, and then he asked Lot and the family, get up and run for safety. We are decided to destroy the city. If you have anybody close to you in the city, go and get them together. You run towards the safety place which I will show you. So Lot went out and spoke to his two son-in-laws. Definitely they were Sodomites. And when this father-in-law came and asked them, let's leave with your daughters because the city is going to be destroyed. The response that he got from them was mockery. That shows his son-in-laws doesn't have any respect to the father. They mocked him and sent him back. That's what we read in verse 14. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But his son-in-law, he seems to be joking. He and his wife were insensitive to the impending danger. The angels are about to destroy the whole city with brimstone and fire coming from the sky. Only a few more minutes left that they can't do that as long as Lot is there because of Abraham's intervention. If Abraham had not done that, Lot would have been finished by this time. Because of Abraham, God delayed the inflicting the punishment. But these people don't know that. They don't have any sense of time. They lost spiritual sensitivity in every direction. Even after repeated urging by the angels for them to run for safety, they still hang around. Finally, we see in the Bible, in 15 and 16 verses. The morning, when the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, "Arise, take your wife and your two daughters who are here. Forget about those people outside, these people, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city." Still, it doesn't think get into their mind. And while he lingered again, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters, and dragged them out. Why? Their mind was so rooted into materialism. What is there in the house they don't want to leave it. They were so much attached with the things of the world. And that made them hang around there. Finally, in the pursuit, in the run, Lot's wife, thinking about, oh, what is the, oh, I lost my vanity bag, which I lost, which I put, I left there, is there. I would like to go and get it back. Oh, my treasure chest of some jewelry was there. I should have taken it. So maybe some of these thoughts came to her mind while she was running, and she looked back to see whether she had got a chance to go back and get it. But when she looked back, you know what happened? She stood paralyzed, lost, dead. And the salt that was raining already covered her and made her a pillar of salt. A woman, Lot's wife, turned into a symbol of total failure. Sodom destroyed, the brimstone and fire dropping like an atom bomb to the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot finally went to a cave and dwelt there. Where was he before the destruction? He was the mayor of Sodom. His seat was at the city gate, the judge, the chief of the city, someone who is recognized and honored. Now, living in a remote mountain cave, detached from the whole human activity, all alone, in isolation. Not finished. His abandoned daughters of Sodomite culture were left to their own fate. His abandoned daughters of Sodomite culture. Lot, even though these two daughters were living with him, he abandoned them, educating them spiritually, introducing them to Yahweh. All they know is the Sodomite culture. And they both, with the father, began to live in a mountain cave alone. And the deprived standards of Sodom corrupted the choices of Lot's daughters and committed the ignominious sin of incest with their father. That is the depth of the fall that this man has fallen into. We don't want to explain anything there. The result was the origin of two cursed tribes of Moabites and Ammonites. So chapter 19, the story of Lot, ends. When we read, we, we are with mixed emotion. We feel sorry, we feel anger, we feel disappointment, we feel a mixed emotion when we study the story of Lot in chapter 19. Now, chapter 19 is a warning to the families. Remember, he was a righteous man. The Bible later on tells that he was righteous. Lot gradually moved away from Abraham, first geographically to the evil city of Sodom, and then to a spiritual, insensitive, and sinful mindset. That was the problem with Lot. Lot's craving for materialistic possessions attracted him to Sodom. So I just wanted to summarize the gist or an X-ray photo of Sodom, of Lot, a spiritual X-ray photo. Lot's craving for materialistic possessions attracted him to Sodom, and he didn't safeguard his family. He became spiritually blind, lost his sensitivity to spiritual matters, and lost his moral values. His spiritual myopia, that means his blindness, look in contrast with the faith of his uncle. Lot became spiritually blind. Abraham became spiritually enlightened. While Lot lived in his house in the city center of Sodom, Abraham continued to live in a tent in Mamre. Did you notice that? Abraham didn't build a house. He chose to live in a tent. Do you think that he didn't have money to build a house? He was a wealthy man. He was a very strong man. He and his 318 valiant servants in the house, in his home, defeated the 4 kings who took away Lot. He was a powerful man. He was a wealthy man. He was a leader. If he wanted, he could have built a big villa to show his pomp and pleasure. But he lived in a tent all his life. What about Lot? He had a house in the city center. All his attention was directed towards building up his material wealth and spoiling his spiritual asset totally, including his family. We read in Hebrew. I just want to get your attention to Hebrew chapter 11, the chapter of the hallmark of warriors of faith. Abraham is mentioned there. We find verse 8 and 9, verse 9 and 10. The 8, 9, and 10 are all concerning with Abraham, but for the time being, we read 9 and 10. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents. See that? In a foreign country, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For the reason, this is the reason, for he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. That is Abraham's spiritual vision. He could see Yahweh is building not a house for Abraham. God is building a city for Abraham. He is the builder and maker of this eternal city, New Jerusalem. This man who lived almost 2,000 years before Christ could see what is there in the distant future, the city that Yahweh is building for him. See the depth of his vision and the depth of blindness for Lot. Very classical example of two extremes. When Jesus was confronted with his disciples by his listeners about who he is, and the Pharisees were challenging his personality and his integrity, Abraham came into their discussion. That's where we read John chapter 8 and verse 56. That also probably will give some light into Abraham. John chapter 8, verse 56. I will read from 54 onwards. Jesus answered, if I honor myself, my honor is nothing. It is my Father who honors me, or whom you say that he is your God. Yet you have not known him, but I know him. And if I say I do not know him, I shall be a liar like you. But I do know him and keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. This is what Jesus said to his people. Your father Abraham, whom you think you feel very much proud of, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day. That is this day. He rejoiced. Did he see? Yes, he saw. That's what he said. He saw it and was glad. By faith, Abraham saw that his great grandson, Messiah, Jesus, being born. And that day of the Messiah, Abraham saw 2,000 years before Christ. That is the vision that Abraham maintained while Lot continually slipped out into oblivion. Finally, this righteous man became a pseudo-sodomite at the city gate. Well, let me move on. How it happened? How is the slipping of Lot happened? It does not happen all on a sudden. It is not the slip of one day. It is a gradual. It was a gradual leakage of spirituality from his personality. It was his gradual move from spirituality to world. His mixed up and confused priorities led him to compromising with the world. He started with compromising. So every spiritual slippage starts with a compromise. And that compromise led him to the next stage of identifying with the evil lifestyle of Sodom. He said, okay, it's not bad, but something which I can manage. So identifying with the evil. And that led to the next stage, amalgamation with Sodom. Sodom and he became one. He lost his individuality. He lost his spiritual sensitivity. He became an alloy. He lost who he is. Abraham's nephew is a great name, it's a great relationship, but he didn't find that relationship of any value or meaningful. Therefore, the third step is amalgamation with Sodom. That leads to detachment from God. And that leads into an identity crisis. And that leads into a step unable to come back. At each of these various stages of his slippage, he had opportunity to come back. But finally, he came to a situation where he cannot return. He became totally insensitive and heading towards a pathetic end. He committed a spiritual suicide of his family. That's what happened. A family in disgrace. No one wants to discuss about those things in a spiritual platform. The paradigm shift in Lot was gradual but steady to a point of no return. 2 Peter 2:8 mentioned about Lot. Lot is mentioned by Peter, a righteous man, but vexed in his soul. Vexed means he never enjoyed his life. He had everything the world could offer. All the pleasures of the world was for him. All the material wealth he had, all the pomp and position and splendor and big villa, all he had. But he vexed a man with a vexed soul, a troubled soul, a lost soul, a soul that has continually interrogated him, but he doesn't know how to respond or how to come back. Finally, he lost his family. Let's move on to chapter 20. Enough with Paul, with the Lot. It's very, very gruesome and very painful. And we feel our heart burdened when we read the story of Lot. Story of Abraham in chapter 20. Again, not a very good story. He also made mistake. Why did the patriarch of faith, Abraham, make the same mistake twice and added a regrettable episode to his profile? This is added into his biodata. The same mistake repeated, and the beauty of the whole thing is that both situations, Yahweh intervened and redeemed them and rescued them. That is the faithfulness of God. The foolery of Abraham and the faithfulness of God. That we find in the two sides of the same coin or the incident. First, in Egypt, we read in chapter 12, when the famine came, he went to Egypt, and Pharaoh noticed Sarah, and she was taken into Pharaoh's harem. And before something happened, God intervened and rescued Sarah. That should have been a lesson that Abraham should never forget. But this time, in Gerar, that is almost 24 years after the first incident. The chapter 12 is when Abraham was 75 years old. And the chapter 20, where this incident happens in Abraham's life, is when he is just 1 year before the birth of Isaac. I couldn't believe that. Remember, this happens after the incident of Mamre. The angel of the Lord, that means the pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. Yahweh and the two angels visited Abraham's tent and confirmed, by next year you will have a son and the son's name shall be Isaac. All this happened, and immediately what happened is Abraham moved to Gerar, a Philistine city and another evil city. And then he was confronted with the same problem again. Abraham and Sarah agreed to tell a lie that he is her brother to the king of Gerar. Sarah was taken to the king's harem again, this time in Gerar. First time it was in Egypt. She's almost 90 years old now. Just imagine. She herself said a few years ago, before the birth of Ismail, that is 13 years ago, he herself said, me, a son? No way. It's not going to happen. Yahweh is playing games with us. I'm not going to believe this. Maybe Hagar probably the one that God will use to bring a son to the family. That's what she said. My time is gone, finished. My womb is dead already. Nothing is going to happen there. That's what she said. Now, the king of Gerar found her attractive. What do you think? This 90-year-old woman was taken to Haram, to the king's Haram, finding her as attractive to the king. Usually young girls are taken to the Haram. But why this 90-year-old? What do you think? Remember, Yahweh appeared a year ago to their tent and promised that by next year she will deliver the son Isaac. So God has miraculously changed her physiology. The dead womb became alive. Her skin became smooth and attractive. Flesh came back to her. She became beautiful. No more a 90-year-old. It is the old Sarah. Probably by the time when Abraham married her, God gave her back her beauty, because we read that she was so beautiful. So God gave her back the beauty, the health, the body, the womb. God did all of that. At least that should have been a visible expression of God started doing something in their life. But this couple failed to understand and made again the same mistake. And she was taken to the king's palace. I was just wondering, when the soldiers of King Gerar knocked at the tent of Abraham and told him, we are coming from the king's palace, and we have an order to take your wife. And where is she? So they came, and Abraham didn't have much of a choice, because Abraham told them that she is not my wife, she's my sister. So it's okay. So they came. Where is your sister? Sarah was taken. When the soldiers take Sarah in their SUV and drive away to the palace, poor Abraham, standing at the door of his tent and looking to the flight of Sarah, will he ever be able to see her again? There goes the promise of Yahweh. I just don't know. The emotion that was going through in the mind of Abraham when he saw Sarah taken away to the palace. Probably once someone goes to the harem, then they don't have any voice. They don't have any choice. It's all what the king decides. A foolish decision. That was the year. That was the year of the long-awaited birth of their son Isaac. So this happened during that period. Man is sin-prone. Satan is a deceiver, schemer, manipulator. Be careful. Behind the screen, or behind the screen, there was someone manipulating to spoil the promise that God gave to this family. Satan knew the promise that God gave to Adam about the promised son, the promised Messiah. Yahweh intervened through the dream to Abimelech, the king of Gerar. God intervened again before Abimelech touched this Sarah. What happened is, the moment Sarah stepped into the palace, Abimelech and the whole family in the palace become infected with disease. That's what we read there in the Bible. They were afflicted, not only Abimelech and everyone in the family, in the house of the king, become afflicted with some disease. We don't know what exactly it is. And that's the reason why Abimelech couldn't touch her, because he himself was inflicted with the disease. And in that situation, God revealed to Abimelech in a dream, appeared to Abimelech in a dream. That was the method of God's intervention with the pagan kings at the time. You will remember that God appeared to Nebuchadnezzar, God appeared to Cyrus. Many kings, God appeared and then gave them the instruction what they should do. Even though they were pagan kings, they tormented God's people, but God appeared to them in dream and told them what they should do, and they did it. This time also, Abimelech had a dream, and in the dream, God said, you are dealing with danger. The woman that you have in the harem is a man's wife, and that man is a prophet. He is God's emissary under divine protection. Don't mess her up. Send her out immediately. If you don't, I'm going to kill you. So strong was Yahweh's intervention with Abimelech. He immediately, as soon as he was awake in the morning, he called Abraham. He called Sarah. He said, oh, this is... He commanded the king to restore the man's wife, or else he will die. He was already under death warrant. Let Abraham pray for healing of the the afflicted in the Abimelech and his household. Not only that, Abraham was, Yahweh told Abimelech, restore his wife to Abraham. Not only that, now you are all afflicted. And if you want to be healed, go and plead with Abraham that he will pray. And when he prays, I will heal you. The only one way that you can be healed is to go back to Abraham and apologize and plead for his mercy. What happened here? Even when Abraham made the mistake, God was trying to vindicate Abraham before the pagan king. This is something is the apex of the mercy of God. God wants to honor Abraham even in this midst of poor testimony. He spoiled the testimony of Yahweh. He being a prophet, blatant lie, concealing the fact, misrepresenting the truth. A prophet, he should have been chastised. Instead, he chastised Abimelech and asked him to go and beg Abraham to come and pray for you. This is something beyond my understanding. What a great God we have. If we happen to be in the good books of Abraham or good books of God, well, he will be sorry that when we make mistake. He will grieve over our mistake, but he will not spew us out. That's the mercy of God. Though Abraham failed, Yahweh protects the promised Messiah seed and rescues them from colossal damage. That's the faithfulness of the promise-keeping God. Praise God. You and me survive only because of this last statement that I made. Faithfulness of the promise-keeping God. It's none of our prayer. It's none of our spirituality or godliness or anything that we do. It is only the faithfulness of the promise-keeping God that continually poured upon his children, his beloved ones. That's the only reason why we are not consumed. Albeit Abraham, God honors Abraham before the pagan king. Abraham prayed, God heard and healed Abimelech's household. But then, after all these things, Abraham was rebuked by this pagan king. Abraham, why did you do this to me? I was about to get dead. You would let me to the point of death. All because of your falsehood, your deceit, your outright misrepresentation of facts that brought my household into collapsing. Why did you do that? A poor testimony of the prophet of God before the pagan king. A warning for God's people. He said to Sarah, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. You know why he said your brother instead of your husband? That's what they said to him in the beginning. So Abimelech was making fun of Sarah. You told me that he is your brother, right? Okay, take this 1,000 pieces of silver to your brother. That's the veiled way of making fun of Sarah. Supreme superintendence of Yahweh in protecting the Messiah seed. Through him, God's redemptive program of salvation to mankind should come. That is God's faithfulness. A supreme superintendence of Yahweh. Yahweh was supremely superintending the activities of human life. Everything that's connected with the promise of God, he was sure to supervise and make it in the way that he wants to lead them. The promise-keeping God intervenes and rescues the fallen believer. That is the fact, Old Testament and also in the New Testament. The faithfulness of God shines brightly through the cloud of human sin. You understand that one? The faithfulness of God shines brightly through the cloud of human sin. We are prone to sin. God is prone to faithfulness. These things happen as the sun shines through the dark cloud on the sky. The faithfulness of God shines through human created darkness. That nothing that man can do to change God's eternal plan. That's the story of Abraham in chapter 20. Faithfulness of God in the midst of human failure and blunder. In closing, this is the last one. In closing, what are the take-home facts, take-home truth for a fulfilled life? Listen to that one by one. And as we go through that, think through and try to assimilate the value of each one of them. The temptation to follow after worldly materialistic pleasure is powerful. Never they are easy things. The temptation to follow the world and the materialistic pleasures, ignoring spirituality, is a powerful force that strikes against every believer. What should be our response? Resist. No other way. Don't negotiate. Don't compromise. Resist. That's what James says in his epistle. Resist the tempter. What is the competitor or alternative to faith? If not faith, what else? Unbelief? Doubt? No. Romans epistle, Paul reveals what is the competitor of faith. It is the sight. The things that we see, S-I-G-H-T, sight. Refuse to believe the things which are not seen and prefers to see the things which are seen. These are the two contrasting things. Man is prone to follow after what he sees and not to follow after what he cannot see by his physical eye, but he can see with his spiritual eye. The eternal weight in glory that is in store for his children are not to be seen with the physical eye, but can be seen with the spiritual eye. And he finds that as valuable. What he sees with the physical eye attractive will not be attractive anymore. So the competitor of faith is not unbelief or doubt. It is what it is tangible, which is for the present, available now, what is available now, not in eternity. Eternity becomes so much dwarfed out, and the present becomes so blown up, big, out of proportion. See, there are, Manoj was asking about where is the physics teacher, because he likes the physics very much. In physics, there are two instruments, microscope and telescope. What does microscopes do? Microscopes blow up the things which are near out of proportion, make them appear bigger than what they truly are. That's what microscope does. It gives its dimensions multiplied many times. The near things became made visible and bigger and huge. What does the telescope bring? The telescope brings the distant things close to you to have a clear vision. That is what telescope does. A spiritual person, if he happens to be microscopic in his vision, he will end up like Lot. But if we have the telescopic vision, he will live like Abraham. So you choose which instrument you want to use in your spiritual journey of faith. Are you a microscopic man? Or are you a telescopic man? What is shocking is not God judges sin. Yes, God judges sin. That is something, but that's not so shocking as the next one, which I'm going to say. But he provides a way of escape from his wrath by dispensing mercy and grace to the righteous. What is shocking is not God judges sin, but he provides a way of escape for the righteous one. And that's out of mercy and grace. That's the beauty of God's children. But don't misuse grace. In order to get the grace multiplied, don't slip into greater sin. That's what Paul says in the 2 Corinthians. Yes, grace is available at any situation, to any measure, at any situation. Grace is available. Therefore, I can keep on sinning. That's the misuse of grace. If a person is truly and enjoy the grace, he will never even think of doing that. Take home truth, next one. Lot represents believers who experience wasted life and opportunities, who refused to commit, although spiritually saved. Spiritually saved people, but lost all the opportunities, wasted the life, end up in failure in the life. His soul barely saved to heaven. We read that in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Red alert, that's a red alert. Wasted opportunities and wasted life should never be in the life of a true believer if you want to live a fulfilled life. Confused priorities and wrong decisions by Lot ends up his family in despair, disgrace, disappointment, disillusion, and death. Fathers, You are responsible to your family. Every member of the family, you are responsible. The decision that you take affects them. They affect their future, affects God's plan. Fathers will be held responsible for the decisions that is taken in the family. Fathership is a great, great responsibility. It's a great privilege, but it's a great responsibility. The patriarch of faith ends up being rebuked by the pagan king. That should not happen. The world should not point their finger against the testimony of a man of God. We should not create a situation where the society or the world points their finger to us and try to mock us and see, this is the man of God. What does he say? What did he do? It should not be a disgrace to the God whom we serve. You are vulnerable. That's the lesson that we learn from both. You are vulnerable, but God is faithful always. Therefore, when you are tempted, when you go through a difficult, tough time, what to do? The Bible gives the answer. Run, run, run to the mercy seat in time of temptation or time of need. Remain spiritually sensitive to know the danger and then run. When you lost the sensitivity of sin, then you don't know how to run, or you don't have the motivation to run. So maintaining spiritual sensitivity is the paramount importance in a believer's life. I'm not talking about sinless perfection. I'm talking about maintaining a sensitivity, spiritual sensitivity, that when he falls, we know that we are fallen, and then there's a way of escape already provided. Run towards the mercy seat and say, Lord, help me, reinstate me, I'm sorry. That's what we read in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16. Run towards the mercy seat to receive grace in time of need. Because we have a high priest who can understand our need. He knows us who we are. Our strength and our weakness, he knows. All what he is asking us to do is come to the throne of grace. Come and request your mercy. I am a reservoir of mercy, ready to be dispensed onto your life. I am ready here. But come to me. That's what the Lord expects from his people. Chapter 18, Yahweh reminded Sarah with an eternal truth. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Is anything too hard for the Lord? No, nothing is too hard for the Lord. So these are the take-home truths that I want to leave with you at the end of the study of chapter 19 and 20. Is anything too hard for the Lord? God himself said it to Sarah. Later on, Gabriel told the same fact to Mary, who asked, how is it going to happen? Because I don't know a man. Is anything too hard for the Lord? And today, it resounds in our soul. Is anything too hard for the Lord? if this is riveted in our soul, that will help us from many, many spiritual faults in our life. If anything to, I have a God. For him, nothing is too hard to handle. Nothing is too hot for him to handle. Because my God is able to lead me faithfully to the end. And praise be to the Lord.